Other big stories we're tracking for you. Approval for the City of Johannesburg's budget is planned for a council sitting this week. The council failed to pass the budget last week, and Gauteng MEC for Cooperative Governance, Lebogang Maile, has given the city until Friday to finalise the budget and revenue-raising measures or face being placed under administration. Now, according to Johannesburg Mayor Jeff Makubo, the delays were caused by unfinished consultations between political parties. This has raised fears once again that South Africa's economic hub will be negatively impacted should that government of local unity fail to pass the budget. Let's unpack the story for you now. Paul Berkowitz is CEO of Hlaziya Solutions, that is a research and analysis consultancy. He joins us now via a video line. Paul, thanks very much for your time this morning on the AM report. I mean, the big question, all of these big stories, we're always looking at them now through the lens of COVID-19. And the big question is, if this budget isn't passed, how does that then affect Gauteng, as we're seeing a surge in numbers here, and its preparations for COVID-19?
Good morning, Michelle. Yes, the province is under a lot of pressure from COVID-19, and we've seen from Finance Minister Tito Mbowene's supplementary budget that money has been put aside to de-densify informal settlements in Gauteng because they've very quickly become the epicenter of the virus. If the City of Joburg fails to pass the budget, we are going to have a lot of uncertainty around things like rates, tariffs, and service charges in the case of water and electricity. And that will make household planning a lot harder when it comes to how much water and electricity to consume. And obviously, proper sanitation and adequate access to water is essential in fighting virus. So the virus is both delaying the passing of the budget, and it's also had an impact on the municipality's ability to raise revenue through selling water and electricity.
So, I mean, you've been tracking the story. What are you seeing just in terms of the political will to get this situation sorted? Is there more politicking than there is actually coming to the table and finding solutions?
Michelle, it's hard to get, as you can obviously appreciate, 100% clear picture of what's going on in virtual meetings with municipal council members. But it's quite glaring that the City of Joburg is the only metro at the moment that we know of that hasn't passed the budget. The other Gauteng metros, Ekurhuleni and Tshwane, have passed their budgets. Admittedly, they haven't had at the moment, they're not in the middle of this fractious infighting between the parties. But there doesn't seem to be the political will really from any of the big parties to get the budget passed.
I mean, would you go as far as to say that the ANC in the province is quite happy to allow that the province is placed under, that the city is placed under administration?
I would, Michelle. And I think if you follow the chain of events of the last 2 weeks and the conduct of the Joburg City Mayor, and the wording of the language sent out by the council that we will endeavour to pass the budget. That's a fancy way of saying we're going to try. It doesn't sound like a firm commitment or strong enough language to appreciate the urgency of the situation. The fact that Mayor Makubo at the 11th hour said, I think before the 4th of July, that they're going to delay another sitting to hear the budget. It's a little bit suspicious. And we've already seen over the last 2 or 3 years, MEC Lebogang Maile's involvement, and some would say over-involvement in what's going on in Tshwane, threatening to place that metro under administration. He's also threatened to place Joburg under administration a couple of times before. So I don't think that the provincial ANC would be too disappointed if Joburg were to be placed under administration.
So just in terms of, if ordinary South Africans listening to this interview are wondering, sitting in their homes, wondering, how does this impact me directly? You've talked about, the improvements to the lives of residents, particularly in informal settlements, because the plans to develop public infrastructure, plans to spend on informal settlements, those plans are now on hold. For the rest of the province, what does this mean for their everyday lives?
So to say again, Michelle, for the rest of the province, what does this mean?
For their everyday lives, how does this impact on me?
if you're a member of, if you're a resident of Joburg, like I am, like most of us are, it creates a lot of uncertainty in terms of household planning. We don't know what our new tariffs for water and electricity and so on are going to be, which may not make too much difference in the day-to-day lives of residents. It could make a big difference to businesses who are the biggest contributors to service charges and typically pay much higher electricity and water bills. So that will make it much harder for businesses to plan. Businesses are already under a huge amount of pressure. And the biggest wrangling, or one of the biggest sticking points in finalizing the budget, is the DA raised the point of adjustments to the capital budget. Now, what we've seen this week is most of those capital line items have been revised downwards. And one of the biggest revisions in rand and percentage terms has been the cutting of the budget for formalizing informal settlements.
Yeah.
That budget was originally 300 million. That's been slashed all the way down to 15 million, which means we are going to delay as a metro the unpicking of spatial disparities. There's going to be more trouble in formalizing informal settlements which have been dense for years, like Alexandra, like Ipswich, which means that the poorest and most vulnerable residents of Johannesburg are going to find it even harder to progress in developmental terms and are still at high risk from COVID-19.
And of course, this is all the more worrying through the lens of COVID-19. But let's take a broader look at the South African economy. Johannesburg, the nerve center of South Africa's economy. We know that the projections when it comes to our GDP, our unemployment numbers, it's all looking very stark. So what happens in the city of Johannesburg surely has an impact on the rest of the country as well.
It does. We are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, contributors to the national fiscus in terms of taxes. A lot of those taxes are going to be worked out automatically, things like that, like the fuel levy. There shouldn't be too much disruption in the collection of those taxes. But as you said, Michelle, the impact on jobs, on unemployment, the impact on development, they are all going to have a knock-on effect. And the city of Joburg and all the other municipalities around the country are caught in a spiral, hopefully not a death spiral, where the virus has cut the demand for electricity and water, mostly from businesses who haven't been operating under lockdown.
Yeah.
So that places a lot more pressure under the city on the city of Joburg's operating budget. They're not collecting as much money. It means they're more dependent on transfers from national government, but at the same time they're contributing less to the national fiscus. So we're in for a very, very tough time.
No, absolutely. Worrying times there, especially in the country's economic hub. Paul Berkowitz, thanks so much for your time this morning on the AM report.